Welcome. In this e-learning module, I shall teach and make you understand how to apply screw and dowels. You are seeing on the screen assembly of 3 plates: the die plate, the die back plate, and the die shoe. These 3 plates are fastened together using 4 screws. What type of screws do we use? We use socket-headed cap screws, also called metric cap screws, also commonly known as Allen screws. How do we apply these screws in our design? Let's take a closer look at the cross-section of the screw. On the die plate, provide a clearance hole for the cap screw's shank and a counterbore hole for the cap screw's head. On the die back plate, provide a clearance hole for the shank of the cap screw. On the die shoe, provide a threaded hole. Now it's evident, to fasten the plates, the screw enters through the clearance holes in the die plate, and then die back plate, and the screw thread gets engaged with the screw thread on the die shoe. How do we decide the size of the screw? As a rule of thumb, we decide the screw size based on the stacked thickness. Stack thickness is the total thickness of the plates with a clearance hole. If the stack thickness is less than or equal to 12 mm, we can use M4 or M5 screws. If the stack thickness is more than or equal to 13 mm, and less than or equal to 20 mm, we can use M5 or M6 screws. If the stack thickness is more than or equal to 21 mm, and less than or equal to 25 mm, we can use M6 or M8 screws. If the stack thickness is more than or equal to 26 mm, and less than or equal to 32 mm, we can use M8 or M10 screws. If the stack thickness is more than or equal to 33 mm, we can use M10 or M12 screws. How do we decide the hole size for the screws? Refer to Part 2 of the Indian Standard Document number 3406, which explains the dimensions for countersink and counterbore holes. CATIA V5 can create standard holes, so we don't have to worry about the hole sizes for standard screw sizes. How do we decide the thread size and depth? The thread size should be the same as the screw size. The thread engagement should be 1.5 times the thread size. And the thread depth should be thread engagement plus 2 mm to 5 mm extra. For example, if you are using an M10 screw, then the thread engagement should be minimum 15 mm, and the screw thread depth on the die shoe can be 2 mm to 5 mm extra. That is, the screw thread depth on the die shoe can be 17 mm to 20 mm. How do we decide the edge distance? Edge distance is the distance between the center of the hole and the edge of the plate. Generally, the edge distance shall be a minimum of 1.5 times the screw size. For example, if you are using an M10 screw, the screw hole should be located at a minimum of 15 mm from the plate's edge. How do we decide on the pitch? Pitch is the distance between 2 screws. The pitch should be a maximum of 10 times the screw size. For example, if you are using an M10 screw, the distance between 2 screws should not be more than 100 mm. When we provide equal edge distance at all 4 corners, it forms a rectangular or square pattern. Due to this pattern, there is always a good chance the assembly technician might assemble the plate in a different orientation than the required direction. Hence foolproofing is very essential. Provide extra value for one of the holes so that the assembly technician won't be able to assemble it in a different orientation than the required direction. Observe, I have provided an additional 5 mm edge distance to one of the holes. There is a clearance between the hole and the shank of the screws. It is not possible to accurately position the plates. There is a good chance that the plates will move while fastening, due to the clearance. To locate the plates accurately, we use dowel pins. We need to provide a minimum of 2 dowels to accurately locate the plates. Dowel pins are also called as parallel pins. They are also commonly referred to as dowels. How do we apply these dowels in our design? Let's take a closer look at the cross-section of the dowel. On the die plate, there is no clearance between the hole and the dowel. On the die back plate, there is no clearance between the hole and the dowel. On the die shoe, there is no clearance between the hole and the dowel. We provide a press fit, or a transition fit, between the hole and the dowel. For example, H7P6 or H7G6. How do we decide the size of the dowel? We will use the same rule of thumb, which we had used for deciding the screw size. How do we decide the hole size for the dowels? The hole size will be the same as the dowel size. We need to provide either a press fit or a transition fit. Hence the hole diameter will have a tolerance of H7. How do we decide the hole depth? The engagement between the hole and the dowel should be 1.5 times the dowel size. For example, if you are using a 10 dia screw, then the hole depth should be minimum 15 mm. Any additional depth available can be relieved, which will make it easy for the assembly and disassembly of the dowel. Generally, dowels are positioned as far as possible from each other. The dowel's distance with any adjacent hole shall be 1.5 to 2 times the dowel size. That's all in this e-learning module. In the next e-learning module, I will demonstrate how to create the screw and dowel hole on the die plate. Thanks.